Hi everyone, this is Ashley with Marshflower Studio. In this video, I'm going to show you how to start crocheting in the round. This is a little bit more difficult than your just kind of regular back and forth row crochet. But once you get the hang of it, it's really kind of easy, it's fun, and you can make a lot of projects a lot faster than doing something like a baby blanket where you have to turn your rows back and forth. So just to kind of review a little bit, make sure that you use a yarn and hook that kind of line up size-wise with each other. The yarn that I'm using for the demonstrations is this. I don't know if this is still available again, but there are other brands that make this kind of bungee yarn that's really good for learning how to crochet. So, oh, I lost my end over here somewhere. There we go. Any color, I don't recommend learning with black because it can be harder to see where some of your loops are. But any other lighter color, definitely just to learn and practice on, will work. So to start with this working in the round idea, we have to create a loop to work in. And there's two different ways that you can do this. The first way is to do a chain 2. So we'll do a slip knot, and then we'll chain, oh, there's our slip knot. We'll chain 2. And then you would be working in that first chain for all of your stitches. Okay? So you'd be going down in the same hole for all of your stitches. So that's a single crochet. You would go back in the same hole and do another single crochet, back in the same hole. So that's one way that you can start this whole working in the round idea. If that's the way you're most comfortable, then absolutely do that. So chain 2, and then you're working all of your first row stitches into that first chain. Okay? If you want to learn the other method, I find it easier just because of some of the projects that I do. Just having that chain space to work in can sometimes be a little small. So I will do what's called a magic circle. Some people call it a magic loop, a magic ring. It's all the same thing. And I've seen a couple different ways that people do these, but I'll show you the way that I do them, because to me it's the most natural way. So I'm going to take my yarn, I've got my tail hanging out the bottom here. I'm going to hold on to it, and I'm going to wrap my working yarn, which is this part here, and I'm going to go and kind of create an X over the middle of my fingers. I'll pull that down and hold it with my pinky so that it's a little tighter here. I want to keep this X shape. So then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my hook, I'm going to go underneath that front piece of yarn. I'm going to grab this second from above and pull it under and turn it as I come up. So I've got this twist kind of on the back of my hook here. Okay? And then I'm going to take my fingers out, and I'm going to yarn over, or grab some yarn, and pull it through that loop that's on my hook. And that creates a slip knot here with the circle to work in. Okay? So that's how I do my magic circle. And then once you're done working inside the circle, you just pull this tail and it closes itself up, and you can have a nice teeny tiny little hole in the center versus having a bigger hole where you just had the chain. So Let me do that again so I can stretch it back out here. I'm going to wrap it around. I'm going to go under and twist, and then I'll grab some yarn and pull it through. Okay, so when you're doing it this way, you're going to want to work your stitches where they're going around both of these pieces of your yarn. Okay, so you've got your tail and your circle. You want to work around both of those to do your single crochets or whichever stitch you're using. So for the purpose of the video, I'm going to do single crochets, and I'm just going to go right through the middle of this magic ring, grab some yarn and pull it back up. Okay, so I've got the two loops on the hook. I'm going to grab some yarn and pull it through both, and there's my first single crochet. Okay, I'm going to do the same thing over again. I'm going to go down through that magic ring. I'm going to grab some yarn and pull it back up. So I've got 2 loops. I'm going to grab some yarn and pull it through both. All right, again, down through the circle, pull some yarn back up, grab some yarn, pull through both. So you can see I have 3 single crochets here now. All right, so I'm going to do 6, because most of the patterns where they tell you to start with a magic circle or a magic ring, they're going to tell you to have 6 single crochets in that magic ring to start. So I've got 3, there's 4, do another one, that makes 5, and then we'll do one more, and that makes 6. So I have 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 single crochets inside my magic ring. So I'm going to take this end tail string and I'm going to gently pull so it closes in this ring. See, I've taken all the slack out of that circle, and it's a nice tight hole here in the middle now. Okay, so then working in the round, and I'll zoom in a little bit here so it's a little easier to kind of see what I'm doing. There are 2 different ways that you can work in the round. One is working in rows still, and the other is just doing an kind of increasing spiral circle. So the first way, you would, again, just using single crochets, you're going to go under those top loops of that very first single crochet, grab some yarn, and you're going to pull that loop that you just brought through straight through that loop that's on your hook. Okay, so you kind of see how that closed in the circle, and we have a nice smooth circle edge all the way around. So to do this method, you would then do 1 chain if you're doing single crochets, and then you would not count that chain as one of your stitches, but instead you would start using that same stitch as your very first stitch for this row. So typically in the second row of this kind of stitch, you're going to have 12 stitches at the end, which means we need to put 2 single crochets in each one of these stitches all the way around. So I would do 1, right? So I went and pulled up some yarn, grabbed some yarn, pull it through both, and then I'm going to go through the same hole and do another single crochet. So I've got 2 that are in that same spot. Okay, so we do that all the way around. We're going to do through the next stitch from our first row and do another single crochet, and then we're going to go through the same hole again and do another single crochet. So now we have 4 single crochets in this row. So we're going to do a few more here. Putting 2 single crochets to each stitch from the row below. Until we get all the way back around. And you should have 12 stitches total when you finish this row. All right, so this is where things can get a little difficult to understand with doing your rows this way. So this right here that looks like a stitch and this right next to it are not actually stitches that you are going to work in. So this part, I'll use my yarn needle, this part right here, these 2 loops here are from the slip stitch that we did to join that first row. So that doesn't count as an actual stitch to work in, okay? And then this right next to it that looks like a stitch is actually the chain 1 that we did before we started our first single crochet. So we don't want to work either one of those because you'll end up coming out with the wrong count of stitches, and depending on the pattern, it's going to make things not turn out to be the right shape, okay? So I'm going to skip both of those and I'll stick my hook in to that first single crochet from that row. I'm going to grab some yarn, pull it through, and this is the slip stitch. So that yarn that I just pulled through, I'm going to continue and pull through that loop that was on my hook. Okay, so I'm back to just a nice round circle. Okay, so in each round, you're going to have some increasing because the circle is going to lay flat until you need it to start kind of curving up into a tube. The pattern that you follow will determine how many rows of increases you do before you start doing your tube. For the purposes of this video, I will show you that when you're doing a tube, you're just going to do, see, I'm working, there's my slip stitch, this is my first stitch. I'm going to work into that same stitch and pull up a single crochet. All right. When you're making your tube, you're just going to do single crochets all the way around. And that's going to start to kind of curl the sides upward into more of like a bowl shape. But if you're doing this method, just remember that when you get to the end of the row, that you're going to skip that join area. So I'm going to skip the join and skip the chain. Okay, and I'm going to go into that first stitch from the row and I'm going to pull through a slip stitch. And you see how when I did this row, it kind of turned this into a little miniature bowl. Okay, so the next row, if you're not doing kind of your turn to start creating more of that bowl tube shape, is going to be an increase row. So I took out my single crochet row. Your next row is going to be an increase, so 2 stitches in the same hole here, and then 1 single crochet, and then 2 stitches here for an increase, and then the next one will be a single crochet. Okay, so we're gonna do 2 in this first stitch. Whoop. So there was 1, there's 2. So in the next one, we're just gonna have 1 stitch by itself, 1 single crochet. Our next one's gonna have 2 single crochets. I'm gonna call that an increase. And then the next one will just have 1. The next will have 2 for an increase. And then the next will just have 1. And you'll keep going all the way to the end of the row. And the patterns that work this way will tell you, do 2 single crochets and then do an increase. And you're going to repeat that, however many times to get to the end of the row. The pattern will tell you what you need to do there. So you'll continue increasing your rows like that until it tells you to just do single crochet rows, and then you'll do that, and it'll tell you at some point that you're going to start doing decreases. Doing decreases is something I'll save for another video so that we don't make any of these too terribly long. Before I end this video, I do want to show you the other way to do the circle, as far as just continuing around versus creating kind of finished rows. So when you're doing just round, kind of more, I guess, spiral is a better way to describe it. Instead of doing a slip stitch here, you're just going to go ahead and do a single crochet. So we'll go through, grab some yarn and pull it up. When you're doing joined rounds, I guess that's actually the term I should use, joined rounds versus smooth circle increase. So joined rounds, you would go here and pull through for a slip stitch, and that's your joined round. For the smooth circle increase, we're just going to start right in with our single crochets. So our next row, we're going to have 2 increases, or 2 single crochets in each stitch. So we have an increase in each stitch all the way around. So I'm going to do the first one, and then there's number 2. And then in the next stitch, we'll do 3 and 4. Next, we'll do 5 and 6 together. And we'll do 7 and 8 together. Then we'll do 9 and 10 in the same hole. And then 11 and 12 in the same hole. And here, because we didn't join, this is our next stitch. Okay, so we have 12. Next we have our row of 18. So we'll go right into this very next set of loops, and we're going to do 2 single crochets in the first one together, and then number 3 is going to be by itself. Okay, and then we'll do 4 and 5 together in the same hole, and then we'll put 6 by itself. We'll do 7 and 8 together, and then we'll do 9 by itself. We'll do 10 and 11 together, and then 12 by itself. Do 13 and 14 in the same hole, and then 15 by itself, and then 16 and 17 together, and then we'll have 18 as our last for this row. So you see you don't have that kind of join and then jump up as you do with the joined rows versus the smooth circle increase. So you're still working the same number of stitches essentially. You're still going to end up with a very similar finished piece, depending on some other different variables. Sometimes when you do the joined rows, you can kind of see a line start where those joined rows kind of stack up on each other. That's why I prefer the smooth circle increase, because you don't see that line where one row stops and then another starts. But it's up to you. It's a personal preference kind of a thing. Some patterns are written to be made with the joined rows. Some are made to be done with smooth circle increase. Either way, you end up with a pretty cool thing that you've made in the end. So practice those, see which one feels most comfortable for you. Remember to hit the like button for me and subscribe so you can see other videos that come out, and hopefully you guys will be making some of those other projects that I show soon. Bye!